Oyolima ni weji roso, oyolima kweke, ama kweke, awa Ibu Egbunike,
The book review, which will be taken by Ifesinachi.
Hi everyone, good morning, this beautiful morning. It's a pleasure to be here, to have the honor to review NKA by Nwachukwu Egbunike. I'm going to start with a little chant, incantatory in the sense of my own way of beginning this review of this beautiful book. Hapụ ihe niile tara n'abalị ka ọ bụla anwụnta. Nwa bịakene bịakene bịakene. Hapụ ihe niile tara n'abalị ka ọ bụla anwụnta. Nwa bịakene bịakene bịakene. The English version would be, let everything that has beaten us in the night be assumed to be a mosquito. My child, come, come, come. Allow anything that beats you in the night to be assumed the mosquito. My child, hecken, hecken, hecken. NKA is a collection of poems by Nwachukwu Egbunike. NKA is Igbo word for craft, for the gift of creation, artistry, innovation, represented by that Igbo god or deity called Ikenga. Ikenga is Igbo god of industry, Igbo deity of gift and talent. And here we are with a beautiful book. And I'm going to begin from the cover page. A lot of times people review books, they jump into the work without having to look at the artistic density, the message, the information on the cover page. So you have, if you have the book with you, look at the cover page, you'll see that Igbo glistening, the NCBD writing, the NCBD signs, what a lot of people refer to as the Sanskrit, the hieroglyphics, an ancient Igbo writing, an ancient Igbo method of writing, which could be traced originally from Ibibio down to Itu, down to Ohofia, Ohozara, and making inroads into Eza in Ebonyi State, and then Enugu, Imo, Anambra, and all of that past extending to Ikore in Rivers State. People refer to Egyptians as having some of the earlier versions of writing. And one thing, like Chimamanda would say, the dangers of a single story. And I'm happy that Achebe was able to bring us to reason that until the hunted begins to tell its own story, the story will always glorify the hunter. So a lot of people attribute writing to civilization. They attribute alphabets, they attribute our first contact with expression. And I'm wondering, like Shakespeare's unfortunate representation of Prospero, down to chords in, what's it called now? The novel Achebe was so mad about, we had our own modes of communication before what Biodun Jeifo calls the disruption of civility. Now, NKA makes it to discover, and a lot of people will be thinking that this was just an artistic design. No, it is not an artistic design. There is a message here, a message of pain, a message of celebration, a message of remembrance. There is eye of the sun, there is eye of the spirit, there is eye of the gods. These are Igbo agencies for deep introspection, which lends credence to the art of writing, in the sense that before you sit down to even negotiate literature, before you sit down to even begin to talk about writing, you must introspect. And I give it to the poets for even ushering us into the pages from the very first cover to let us know that, look, I wasn't just writing, I thought before writing. So I welcome you guys to the contents where we have 3 partitions, and that will say beautifully partitioned in the sense that each session is thematically related. The poems in each section are thematically related. You know, these days you open a poetry collection and they are symbols of poems you shouldn't have read. But this is unlike it, because here we have a conscious poet who followed a sequence of emotion, a chronology of things, how they happened, what became, the making of pain, the regurgitations of emotion, remembrance, sankofa. That's African attitude of looking back to look forward. So in a world where we are forgetful, social media has made life beautiful and almost unbearable at the same time, in the sense that people now rely on Google to remember something. But there has to be a causal effect before you are referred to Google. So what is the role of the writer, the role of the poet in a society that is fast in forgetfulness? And that is where we begin to classify Nwachukwu Egbunike, who uses poetry to lure us back to our senses, to say, hold on a bit, look back a bit. For a child who does not know where the rain began to beat him, cannot and will not be able to tell where the rain stopped beating him or where he dried his body. So we have the very first poem, Nkanwigwe. It carries the weight of an incantatory and celebratory tone. And this poem would even go well with an Oja. Of course, Nwachukwu Egbunike here pays homage a lot, both in dialectical variations, in cosmological reasoning and representation of theories, to his Enugu heritage. You see, it was a sleepless dream, hours flashed by like lightning, yet dragged like an unending shower. With bellies full of words that only the earth would smell, assembled for the trek before night wrapped day in warm embrace. This reads like the kind of poetry the Oshundere would write. Story-like, it reads like those Igbo societal openings of Umuofia, which could be gotten from Chinua Achebe's Things Fall Apart. And so we have a child paying homage to his father. A lot of people would say, at what point does poetry become the dreams of the society? But Nwachukwu Egbunike calls us to reason, to say, I am my father's son, reference to the fact that whatever I say is the dream of my late father. In as much as the poem carries a tone of pain, it carries a tone of sadness, there is a gloom that pervades the work. But again, we are ushered into to see that there is beauty in pain. Because for every poet who is conscious of his art, pain has a way of making art beautiful. And so we are presented with a beautiful work here that are, that are canticles of pain. So towards the last, the second to the last stanza in page 12, you will see where he said, Aja la no aja, nto la no nanto, Ụkọchukwu onye ọcha intones with incense. Anyị bụ mmadụ, arụ anyị bụ aja, mkpụrụ obi anyị ga-ala n'iru Chukwu, the shovel hooves down earth, earth swallows you. Emotional, isn't it? But in this, I see that Achebeic, that Adicheic craft of subduing English language to bend to the rules of Igbo reasoning. And it refers me to an essay by New Oshundere where he says, Yoruba thoughts, English writing, or English words. He thinks in Yoruba and writes in English. But here we see a code switching, a code mixing of both English language and Igbo language. And it is not every poet that can do this, in the sense that there has to be a thin line between where to infuse Igbo and where to infuse English, where Igbo has to stop for English to come in for them to make sense. So Nwachukwu is pained, but I see beauty of crafts. I see beauty of writing. And of course, a child who does not know what killed his father would definitely lose his life in the same way. So this is a young man paying tribute to the life of his father. And of course saying, I remember and I know where I am coming from. And I'm looking back to look forward. In the very next poem, where I think he plays on words, the beautiful imagery captures a very beautiful description with that Igbo cosmological theory of Ozemena. Ozemena is an Igbo nomenclature that represents pain. There are post-war children. There are postnatal children in Igbo cosmology, where a woman who has given birth, the first child, the second child, the third child, and maybe perhaps loses them to infant sickness, and or maybe loses them to any type of death, or even miscarriage before eventually giving birth. Children who were born within the tail of the Biafran War and almost immediately after the Biafran War, their names are usually Ozemena. That is why I am a champion of tribal or cultural names to children. So you go out on the way or on the road, you encounter somebody and the person says, my name is Ozemena. They didn't just name him Ozemena out of the blues. There is a story behind that name, and it's usually a story of pain. Ozemena means that it shall not happen again. May this evil not befall us again. May this pain not return. So those Igbo mothers and fathers who lose one child, second child, the third child, and then the fourth one comes, after a lot of prayers, sacrifices, and offering, you will hear Ozemena as a name. It is totally different from the same theory of Ogbanje and Abiku. Ogbanje and Abiku are particularized in the sense that it is one child that keeps coming and going. But Ozemena, these are different children. Maybe it is a natal issue of the woman, she has miscarriage, or there is an illness around that kills these children. Or those days when they believe that some parents go into a kind of contract with an oracle, maybe their inability to keep it is bringing the oracle home to kill them. And also a family that has witnessed so many accidents and carnage and deaths like we have in Nwachukwu Egbunike's words. And so I usher you into the very first stanza that, as long as I'm concerned, is the most beautiful stanza in this collection on page 14. I hope I'm being heard.
Yes, you are.
Okay. So you have the craters of Ugwu. People who don't know Enugu, the current Nigeria's is it Minister for Foreign Affairs or Onyema or something? I think is a grandchild or the great grandchild of the person Onyema who worked with colonial masters as at the time when there was coal scavenging in Enugu. So that particular road is more or less named after this colonial man of Igbo heritage. So the craters of Ugwu Onyema reverberate with venomous twists, flinging through the lazy curves, called with vengeance. The kiss comes as a wasp, seduces, eyes glued on a cacophonic dance, and a clash. A truckload of sadness collides with a hapless virgin, levitates through space with the wind as witness, stirs up a canopy of red dust, as arsenic gray stands idly by, a mere onlooker. Faster than a vanquished star, everything collapses upon itself. What is gravity here as all spirals down, down, down? If this is not the most beautiful painting, the most beautiful imaginary recollection of an accident, and not just a mere road carnage on Ugwonyema. People who know that road will understand that minus that small lane, every other thing is hilly. And the moment any car knocks you off the road, you are falling into a big gully that is endless in its depth. And here, pain continues to spread all over the poet's imaginations. He is talking about the pain of the brother, losing a brother, a father on road accidents. Does it not tell about Nigeria and the unnecessary road accidents that could have been avoided, maybe because some government official was unable to carry out a given task, maybe because a driver somewhere agreed to disobey FRSC's order of not drinking and driving. Of course, road carnages are mostly from a driver's particular carelessness. In Lagos here, there is a popular phrase on the road that if you are driving, you should drive not just for yourself, but for the next man behind you or before you, because that person may not actually be conscious of what he or she is doing on the road. And so, even while we are celebrating pain, I call it a celebration because it has bettered a beautiful collection. I refer you to the many problems of Nigeria, from road carnages to political corruption to issues of failed medical system where someone who could have been saved by something in the hospital is lost because that particular thing is lacking. So again, I see from this collection also Nwachukwu Egbunike's reference to his Catholic heritage. And this follows the tradition of Gerard Manley Hopkins, a beautiful Catholic poet, and down home to the late Christopher Okibo. If you look at page 18, the poem called Forever, where he has a Latin incursions into the work. And so this is also a little code switching or code mixing here with not just Igbo now, but there is Latin. And where you see, I think in line 2 of the second stanza, the Ophili et Phile, which actually means, is an opening word now in the Gregorian hymn, meaning the son of the sun. So in the whole session of, we have not forgotten, we have memories of pain, accidents, laws, and there is more or less a traditional rewriting, a reordering of a traditional folktale of the Grecian tradition, where you have the Helen of Troy. And so here, this poet makes a wide reference to a particular Helen who is now resting in heaven, perhaps the fiance of a dear friend called Mark, whose memory the poet upholds in this collection. And then we move on to regurgitations, where the poet visits us in poet 23 with a kind of deja vu, making reference to not today. Not today is a Nigerian pidgin allusion to is it today? It's not today that it started. So we have yesterday, their parts were naked, splitting into parallels to stray the wounded. They staged plays, beat their drums, swung from one foot to the other. I have seen this before. Yesterday, I was there when this was performed, but today it looks new. Now, this is a kind of deja vu psychologically, but you see, this poet here is talking about a kind of cyclical pattern of reordering. I'm shocked that the debate of people like Ruth Finnegan in African theater are having it that Igbo people or Yoruba people or Africans in general are just meeting theater because of civilization. This poem lends credence to such debates to say it didn't start today. Before you came, we have been doing things like this. Before you came, we had Tales by Moonlight. Before you came, we had drama nights where we drum and beat drum, masquerade festivals where everything follows a liturgical passion. You didn't just introduce this to us. So this is more or less a protest poem saying it is not today, that there is a shift now from the local spatial stage to a raised temporary stage doesn't mean that you are the champion of this introduction. And of course, this particular collection, this session, Regurgitations, carries the weight of Jared Angira's conscription of words. Jared Angira is a well-celebrated Kenyan poet whose collection, Silent Voices, published in 1972, is still re-echoing across East Africa. The short witness presentations of his poems. And of course, you know that short poems are so notorious for their wittiness. And we see it in this particular session where the poet follows that tradition of short but witty and powerful poems. If you look at page 24, you will see where he talked about my help. It's funny, yeah, to me, one of the funniest poems, if not the funniest in the collection, greeting my head, it's up to the MMM hill where my help comes from. Soon the hill levels and my help forever snores. He's talking about MMM. Of course, almost every Nigerian, except the discerning ones, fell victim to MMM. The poet accuses recession as giving room for such a proportion of scandal. But then also, from what we could decipher, we can make reference to insatiability, people's hunger for free things. This verse carries the weight of Psalm 121. I look up to the hills. Where does my help come from? My help comes from the Lord who makes heaven and earth. And so a lot of people, we are so confident that MMM won't fail them. And so one day, before people could say Jack, stories upon stories upon stories started pervading the air. Husbands lost wives, wives lost husbands, the relationships were broken, people fought, and all that and all that. Now, we have a collection that breaks a lot of rules. Nwachukwu Egbunike strikes me as a very subtle revolutionary, a very subtle Protestant. Despite his encoded messages here and there, you could see from his style that this is one poet who, though, has read other poets, but is insisting on bringing out a style that could be referred to as Egbunike. What am I saying? Page 26, you see a poem in Igbo language, a full poem in Igbo language. He is no longer code switching or code mixing. It is a total new style in its own. And here we are talking about Mbala Loteze. If I don't get it correctly, it is not because of my inability to speak in Igbo, but because, of course, you know that Igbo dialects vary. I'm from Imo State, and the Enugu dialect is quite difficult for somebody like me. Now, he didn't just put up an Igbo poem. He brought up a slight, what I would call, even though it carries almost the same weight and meaning, but if you follow the true theatrical practice of translation, you will know that there are some words or lines that were missed, but he provided a translation by Abialum Kisikem Isinwa Onyisi Kambo abịakwutere m isi ya ndụ adalụ m n'ụkwụ gị na-arịọ gị ka m fụ gị n'anya ka m welu anya gị wee fụ gị eze nwe ụwa lee m a 21st century reordering of Idoto. I do not know what else it could be, not in the sense of they are two different things. Idoto was soliciting to a mother in the Idoto River. This particular poet here, the persona here is referring to the big God in heaven, but it carries that same tone, that same soberness, that for redemption. And so we have a poet who is beautiful in his orderliness, in revolutionizing what we call a 21st century poet who does not follow rules. Of course, rules are meant to be broken, aren't they? It leads us to page 31, where I keep maintaining that this poet is highly influenced by his Catholic heritage. You recall, of course, the 7 Beatitudes. And so now there is in which this particular poem carries a new tone, a revolution in its entirety. Are we going to call this Beatus, or are we going to call this Beatus? But in any way we want to refer it to, we are not going to have a Beatitudes. But here, from second stanza, say, blessed are those free from the slavery of wealth, from the bile of poverty, from the chains of avarice. Blessed are those who complain not, compile not offenses, seek no compensation. This, again, brings Nwachukwu Egbunike to the courtroom of revolution, in the sense that Nwachukwu Egbunike took that Bible verse to give us a reordering that will capture the true essence of the 21st century. I was fortunate to be in a gathering where some philosopher was arguing about some of the hackneyed instructions in the Bible that no longer that is no longer attuned with the current happenings, with the events of the 21st century. In as much as I do not totally agree with him, because there is a depth with which one is supposed to read the Bible. But here, the poet is saying, okay, he wasn't there in that conference. Nwachukwu wasn't there, but he's saying, okay, if you so wish that we have a new method or a new approach to some Bible verses in order to have a full understanding of our recent happenstances, here you are. So I wouldn't want to keep taking much of our time. So I want to finalize by saying that Nwachukwu Egbunike is a poet that has read other poems and other poets, because a lot of people are so engrossed in their craft that they only take up their works to say, yes, I'm writing a poem and I'm a good poet, my words are there for me and all that. But if you look at the references from the Greek gods to the Igbo gods to the Yoruba gods to the geographical space that the poetry covers to the emotional style in approach, you will understand that here we have not just a poet, but a teller, an enchanter, a traditional raconteur who integrity of his people and weaves them in, even ashamed. A lot of people take glory in saying how to speak in Igbo. A lot of people take glory in saying, I am not writing Igbo. But here, he didn't just give us a separate that is detailed in Igbo. Rather, we have both a mismatch of both Igbo, English, and an incursion of Latin, because these are spaces he has inhabited, both physically and spiritually, emotionally and spiritually, in the sense of his ability to regurgitate those Latin words, of course, from Catholic, then physically from Enugu to Lagos to have an interspersal of pidgin than Igbo. So generally, I would say that here is a that will stand the test of time. A lot of people write poetry even last for the very year of its publication. Want to look at the effect of memory. If we want to look at strength of what memory perverts, we are going to keep making references. Any scholar is actually essay or a thesis on memory and NKA. If the scholar is well read, NKA way into the references. So, ladies and gentlemen, I present to you poems of Nwachukwu Egbunike, and I hope you do have a copy. And also available a copy of those who would like to have the work. I appreciate you all for listening.